It was the week before Valentine's Day when the first gift arrived. Eliza Summers had always loved Valentine's Day. It wasn't the flowers or the chocolate, though they were nice enough. No, for her, it was the mystery, the excitement of wondering who would send her something, who would remember. She wasn't in a relationship. But that didn't matter. It never did. She was popular enough, a kind woman with a gentle smile who worked at the local antique store. Her life wasn't thrilling, but it was enough. That year she had decided to spend Valentine's Day alone. She had no expectations, but the arrival of the first gift changed everything. It came in the mail on a cold Tuesday morning, just after the town's postman dropped off his usual load. She had been sorting through some boxes in the store, dusting off old trinkets and pieces of history that had been forgotten by time, when she noticed the envelope on the counter. It was small, with no return address, just her name written neatly in elegant script. Curious, Eliza opened it and a small, delicate box fell out. It was made of dark mahogany, polished and smooth, the kind of wood that spoke of history and old money. She opened the box carefully, and inside was a single beautiful red rose, its petals still fresh despite the cold. The rose was unlike any she had seen before, almost unnaturally perfect. She ran her fingers over the velvet petals, feeling a strange, tingly sensation running up her spine. There was no card, no note, just the rose. Who could have sent this? She wondered. She was flattered, but the mystery only deepened. No one had approached her with any interest, no one had mentioned a gift. It seemed like something out of a dream, a gesture too perfect for someone as simple as her. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, but Eliza couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her since receiving the gift. She had placed the rose in a vase, but it seemed almost to glow in the dim light of the store, as if it were more than just a flower. Every now and then she would catch a glimpse of it from the corner of her eye, and it seemed to shimmer just a little too brightly, casting a shadow that lingered too long. Later that evening, just as Eliza was preparing to close the shop, another gift arrived. This time it was delivered by hand, a knock on the door followed by a quick, almost urgent retreat. Eliza opened it cautiously, expecting to find a customer or perhaps the postman again. But no, there was only a small package lying on the doorstep, tied with a deep red ribbon. Inside she found a delicate silver necklace. It was simple yet stunning, a small pendant in the shape of a heart, embedded with what appeared to be a single diamond. She held it in her palm, marveling at how light and smooth it felt, as though it had been made specifically for her. A chill ran down her spine, but she pushed it aside. It was just a gift. Maybe someone had developed a sudden infatuation with her. But something inside her told her to be cautious. She placed the necklace around her neck, the cold metal against her skin sending another shiver through her body. When she looked into the small mirror above the counter, she couldn't help but smile. It looked perfect on her. But then, something caught her reflection. Something in her eyes, something in the shadows behind her that shouldn't have been there. She spun around quickly, but there was nothing, only the darkened corners of the store, where the old antiques sat undisturbed. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The night passed, and Eliza did her best to shake off the unease. The gifts were beautiful after all. But as she lay in bed, the feeling grew stronger. What was it about them? Why did they feel wrong? The third gift arrived the following morning, but this time it was different. There was no box, no envelope, just a single red envelope slipped under the door. Inside, Eliza found another note, written in the same elegant script as before. "You are the one I have chosen. There is no turning back." Her heart skipped a beat. The message sent a wave of ice through her body. This wasn't just a love note. This wasn't just someone showing affection. This was something else. Something sinister. Her fingers trembled as she read the note again, her eyes scanning each word, her mind racing to understand what was happening. The note was accompanied by another gift, a small velvet pouch. Inside, Eliza found a ring, a simple silver band, but engraved with strange symbols she had never seen before. They twisted around the band, curling and nodding in an intricate pattern, as if they were telling a story. She didn't know what to do with it. Something in her gut told her to throw it away, to get rid of it, but another part of her, some dark, curious part, urged her to keep it, to put it on. Against her better judgment, she slid the ring onto her finger. The moment it touched her skin, her vision blurred. The room around her seemed to grow colder, and the walls of the shop, the walls she had known for so long, seemed to distort and bend. She stumbled back, gripping the counter for support, her heart pounding in her chest. The air felt thick, like she was no longer alone. There was something there with her, something unseen, something old and waiting. The moment the ring was on her finger, the door of the shop slammed shut with a loud bang, making her jump. She turned toward it, breathless, her body frozen in fear. And then the lights flickered. A shadow appeared in the corner of the store, tall and looming, its shape impossible to define. For a moment, Eliza thought she saw a face, pale and translucent, staring back at her from the darkness. The shadow grew, stretching and curling, until it was almost suffocating. "Eliza," a voice whispered from the shadows. It was a soft, breathy sound, almost like the wind itself. But it was unmistakably human and unmistakably close. Her breath caught in her throat. Who is there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. The figure stepped into the light. It was a man. Tall, with eyes that glowed a faint, unnatural red. His face was pale, almost translucent, and his clothes, ragged, old-fashioned, seemed to belong to another time. "Eliza," the figure said again, this time clearer, more forceful. "I've been waiting for you." Eliza backed away, her legs shaking beneath her. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The figure's lips curled into a twisted smile, his eyes never leaving hers. "You've accepted the gifts. You've put on the ring. Now there is no going back." Suddenly the room was filled with an overwhelming, crushing pressure. The walls seemed to close in and the temperature dropped dramatically. Eliza gasped for breath as her vision blurred, her mind spinning, trying to comprehend what was happening. The man stepped closer, his form becoming more solid, more real with every passing second. And then he reached out a hand, a cold, bony hand, and Eliza felt a chill slide down her spine. "Eliza," he whispered once more. "You are mine now."
The figure before Eliza was almost ethereal, but its presence was undeniable. His face, pale and gaunt, stretched into a grin that made her stomach twist. The air around her felt thick and oppressive, the walls of the store closing in like a vice. Every breath she took felt heavier, and her heartbeat quickened, pounding in her ears as the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to pulse with life. "Who are you?" Eliza managed, her voice trembling. She wanted to back away, to flee, but her legs felt as if they had been weighed down by something ancient and powerful. There was nowhere to run. The figure tilted his head, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the shop. They were red, bright, unnatural red, burning like embers in the dark. "I am the one who has been waiting," he said, his voice low and smooth, but edged with something menacing. "The one you've invited." Eliza's mind raced, her thoughts jumbled, but one word rose above the rest: invited. She hadn't invited anyone. She hadn't wanted this. She hadn't wanted any of it. "The gifts," she whispered, her mind struggling to catch up to the reality of the situation. "What do you mean by that?" The figure stepped closer, his movements slow but deliberate. There was no noise, no footsteps, just a feeling of something sliding closer through the thick fog of fear surrounding her. He reached into his tattered coat and pulled out a small, ornate box. The same kind of box that had held the first gift, the rose. "Do you remember this?" he asked, holding the box out to her. His fingers were long and skeletal, the skin stretched tight over the bones. Eliza stared at the box, her heart racing as the memories flooded back: the strange, beautiful rose, the delicate necklace, the ring. All of them gifts that had come without explanation, without a name, just simple tokens of affection. Or so she thought. "I didn't ask for them," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't want them." The figure smiled again, the grin unsettling and wide. "But you accepted them. You wore the necklace. You placed the ring on your finger. You thought it was harmless. But you are bound now, Eliza. There's no turning back." With trembling hands, Eliza reached for the box, almost against her will. She opened it slowly, revealing a small, delicate pendant inside. It was silver, shaped like a heart, but it was tarnished, its edges frayed. But what made her blood run cold was the inscription carved into it, an inscription she had never seen before, yet it seemed so familiar. Asterisk. "For the one who dares to love, the price must be paid." Asterisk. The words seemed to echo in her mind, repeating over and over, growing louder with each passing second. Eliza's breath caught in her throat as she looked back up at the figure. "What does that mean? What price?" He stepped even closer now, his presence overwhelming. The price, Eliza, is your soul. Eliza's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. The weight of the words hit her like a hammer. Her soul? How could this be? This was absurd. This couldn't be real. But the terror she felt in the pit of her stomach, the fear that clawed at her chest, told her otherwise. She looked at the pendant in her hand, feeling its unnatural chill. It was cold, and possibly cold, like it had been sitting in the heart of winter for centuries. Her fingers curled around it, and she felt a jolt of electricity shoot through her body. Suddenly, the shop seemed to darken even further, the lights flickering as the figure's form seemed to stretch, to expand, as if it was no longer bound by the limitations of the room. The air grew thick, the shadows around her moving, twisting, whispering. "Why me?" Eliza whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure reached out, placing a cold hand on her shoulder. "Because you were chosen," he said, his voice a soft hiss. "You sought the love of a man who lived long before you. You sought what you should not have. And now you will pay the price for it." Eliza recoiled, the words sinking into her like a dagger. I don't understand. Who are you?" He smiled again, but this time, it was a smile that held no warmth, no kindness. "I am the one who was lost. The one who died centuries ago. And you, Eliza, you are the one who has opened the door. You've accepted the gifts, and now you belong to me." Her mind was spinning. A man who had died centuries ago. Was this a curse? Was this some twisted game? She thought back to the first gift, the rose, the strange feeling it had given her. The necklace that had felt so cold, and now the ring, the tarnished pendant. All of them seemed to be part of something larger, something far darker. "You can't have me," Eliza said, her voice shaking with defiance. She stood up, her body trembling, but there was something inside her that wouldn't give up, that wouldn't let this strange figure, this force, take her. She didn't care what this was, she would fight. "I'll never be yours." The figure's eyes narrowed, and his smile faded. "You think you can fight what is already yours?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "You think you can escape what's been set in motion?" Suddenly, Eliza felt an intense pressure in the air. It was as if the walls of the store were closing in, suffocating her. Her vision blurred, and the room seemed to tilt, spinning around her. The fog inside the shop grew thick and dense, and she struggled to keep her balance. "I won't let you control me!" Eliza shouted, pushing through the fog of fear clouding her mind. The figure's form flickered, distorting for a moment. Then, in an instant, he was gone, disappearing into the shadows, leaving only the faintest trace of his cold presence behind. Eliza stood there, breathing heavily, the fog slowly dissipating around her. Her heart was still racing, but the terror that had gripped her was starting to fade. She had survived this encounter. But she knew, deep down, that the danger wasn't over. This wasn't just a visit from a ghost. This was something much darker. And whatever had been set in motion with the gifts, whatever ancient force had chosen her, it wasn't finished yet. She looked down at the pendant in her hand, the inscription still glowing faintly. "For the one who dares to love, the price must be paid." The air around her seemed to grow still, and the sense of being watched lingered like a cloud, heavy and oppressive. The shadows in the store no longer felt like a part of the room. They felt like they were something else. Something alive. And Eliza knew that the secret behind these gifts, these dangerous, cursed gifts, was something she would have to uncover. There was no turning back now. The story was just beginning.